Alright y'all, welcome to my very first YouTube video on this channel. Today we'll be going through a step-by-step, very in-depth tutorial on how to cut your hair. Alright y'all, so this video is for beginners. And when I say beginners, I mean like I'm gonna go throughout this video and take an approach as if you, the viewer, have never touched a clipper a day in your life. So I'm gonna try to explain everything to the T, at least as much as I can. So if you do have a little bit of experience cutting hair, it may be in your best interest to skip a little bit throughout and kind of pick the information as you will. But for my guys here that have never cut hair before, I think this would be the best video out right now. So first things first, before we get into the cut, I'm gonna go through a couple of essential items I feel like you guys should have, some key terms and principles that you should keep in mind while you're cutting hair. So let's get into it. All right, y'all, first up, for the essentials that you'll need for cutting hair, we got your clippers and your outliners. Now, I'm gonna drop the price that I paid for both of these right here. And I just wanna make the point and say, I know most of y'all, or y'all probably know somebody that pays this price right here for cutting your hair. So if you just make that one-time investment on buying some clippers and some outliners, man, you're gonna save hundreds and hundreds of dollars, thousands throughout your life. And if you even start cutting others and profiting off of it, you will make up that money you spent in the past. And you can even find just a clipper for half the price, like super cheap, under $30. You know, outliners are great and I do consider them essentials, but if you can care less about your hairline, or if you have a naturally straight hairline, you can always just get away with just the clipper part. All right, next up, we got your different guards. Now, I'll get into more details as we get deeper into the video, but essentially, guards are used to control the bulk and the fade of the hair. All right, and for number 3 on the list, we have a brush and/or comb. Now again, I'll get into deeper details as we get further into the video, but for right now, I want you guys to keep in mind that you should have a comb or a brush on you at all times while you're cutting, and have it as accessible as you even would for your clippers, because they're pretty much almost just as important. All right, next up, we have clipper sanitizer. Now, I truly suggest investing in one of these, especially if you're thinking about cutting others' hair. All right, y'all, now next up, we have a mirror. Now, I personally love this 3-point mirror, and I strongly suggest in getting one, but I personally started off with kind of the big bathroom mirror, if you will, with a smaller handheld one. And that also is completely fine. I just personally find it to be harder because you have to, you know, hold the mirror up, and you have to keep in mind that everything you're doing is kind of backwards, if that makes sense. But you can find one of these for like under $30 or so. So if you have it, or if you have access to that money, man, I definitely suggest in getting you one of these. All right, last but not least, man, we have lighting. So technically, you can cut your hair. I guess if you can see your hair, you know, if there's enough light to see it, you can cut it. But what I will say is, if you're focusing on that canvas and on that specific point so long, the hair will start to blend together. You know, it will start to seem like you've blended perfectly fine when in reality you didn't. So lighting only makes that situation easier. I definitely suggest in finding an area in your home that has, you know, a lot of light, especially natural light, or if not, investing in maybe a ring light, or even going to your local Salvation Army or thrift store and trying to find a lamp. All right, y'all, now we're gonna go through a couple of key terms, some phrases, vocabulary that you may hear me say in the video, or that you may hear other barbers say. So first up, we got going with and going against the grain. All right, so the main focus that I want us to pay attention to is the direction in which the hair is growing. So most people's hair grows downwards, others backwards, some forward, and so on and so forth. So when you hear the phrase cut with the grain, that pretty much means that you will take your clippers and cut in the same direction as which you see the hair growing. And if you've guessed it, Cutting against the grain means that you take your clippers and cut in the opposite direction of which you see the hair is growing. Next up, we got guidelines. We're gonna talk about what guidelines are. All right, y'all, so we're gonna use this screenshot as reference. This is a screenshot of a fade right before the blending process happens. So as you can tell, there are 4 different shades from darkest to lightest. We'll call the darkest section 1, second darkest section 2, and so on and so forth. So a guideline is pretty much the very center point in which 2 sections connect. So if I zoom in some, you can kind of see that guideline along with the 2 others. Now for the purposes of this video, we're going to say that guidelines are created by the lever being open. That's not totally true, especially when you learn how to play with the lever, but for now, we're going to say that creating guidelines happens by the lever being open. And in the next section, I'm going to go over how to take those guidelines out. All right, and now we're going to talk about having your lever open like this and closed, and kind of why you would use this and what the functions of it are. All right, y'all, so I think it's pretty self-explanatory on what I mean by opening and closing your lever. So for this section, we're just going to talk about the reasons on why you will either open or close it. So for now, we're going to say that opening your lever is how you create those guidelines, and closing your lever is how you blend and take those guidelines out. So just a quick tip to keep in mind, because I know this is something that I used to get confused with when I first started cutting hair, is that whatever guard you use on a certain section, in order to take that bottom guideline out, you will use that same guard with the lever closed. So let's take section 2 for an example. I used a 1 guard, lever open. So in order for me to take out that bottom guideline, I will use a 1 guard with the lever closed. Now again, in certain scenarios, these principles may not always stand to be true. For instance, you may have to use a different guard with a lever closed to take out a bottom guideline, or you may only have to close a lever 3/4 of the way. But because this is a beginner's video, we're gonna stick to these principles, and you'll see me do it in a second when you watch me cut my hair. All right, y'all, now that we've pretty much gone through all the basics, the essentials, the vocabulary, and everything of that nature, I think it's finally time to pick up the clippers and get cutting on this hair. Let's go. All right, so first things first, for step 1, man, y'all know we gotta wash our hands. I don't care if you cutting your own hair or if you cutting somebody else's, we should always be practicing good, clean habits and washing our hands before every cut. So for step 2, I'm gonna begin sanitizing my clippers and my guards. And as you can see, I actually broke part of the bottle. But you just need a real small amount. And that right there was a lot, low key. But you wanna make sure you brush that sanitizer in and even get in the small crevices, because that's where hair tends to get stuck a lot. Now I'll begin the same sanitation process on my outliners and the rest of my guards. After I'm done with that, I'll begin to apply clipper oil on my outliners and my clippers. Now I didn't name this as an essential because technically you don't need it, but it does keep your clippers sharper for longer and prevents them from overheating. So as you'll see, I'll put it in that little sliver right there I'm pointing at, and all you need is just about a drop or 2. Now I'm gonna tie up my hair because it falls over the places that I want faded. And I want you guys to keep in mind, man, this is like a painting, it's artwork. So you want your canvas to be as clear as possible so you can prevent any mistakes. Now remember how important I was saying the comb and brush were. And it's especially important to brush or comb your hair before you begin the cut. And the reason for this is because if there's a section of your hair that you didn't thoroughly brush, and for whatever reason it may be flowing in the backwards or upwards direction, you can accidentally go against the grain and snag part of your hair that you didn't want taken off. I do want to apologize for the blurriness in some parts of the video, but I will do a good enough job of explaining so you guys don't have to worry about it. So the next step will be grabbing our outliners and creating our first initial guideline. Now you do want to try to make this guideline as straight as possible because your next guidelines will be based off of this first one. But it's not the end of the world if it's not super straight, because at the end of the day, you'll be taking that line out anyways. So for my initial guideline, as you can see, I made it a little convex around the ear to give it a little personality, if you will, a little flair. But that first guideline can always simply just be straight. And now I'm going to take out all that bulk under my first guideline. But before I do so, I'm going to make sure to brush all that hair down. And I'm actually going to use my outliners for this. And what you see me doing is pretty much creating that section for the lightest part of my fade. And all I'm doing is just cutting against the grain and going right up to that guideline. So after all that bulk underneath my first guideline is taken out, I'm going to open up my lever and go up about an inch, starting on one side of my head and making my way all the way around to the other. Now some people will tell you to only go up half an inch, but it's pretty much up to you and how stretched or compressed you want your fade to be. I like mine to be really stretched and noticeable, so that's why I go up a full inch. Now as you can see, there are still some parts of the second guideline that are a little sloppy and not completely straight, and that's kind of just because I had terrible lighting and it was hard for me to see. But with the beauty of cutting hair, we can always fix that up and make the cut still look super clean and crispy. So now I'm going to take that one guard, lever open, and go up about another full inch on my hair. And yeah, y'all, if you see yourself like excessively getting close to the mirror, squinting your eyes a lot, 9 times out of 10 the lighting isn't the best. You also want to try and make sure your light is as white as possible, especially if you have darker or black hair like mine. As you can see, the environment I'm in has more of a darker brown tone, and it reflects off the hair in just a weird way. And now you guys can see those 4 different sections I was talking about, from the darkest at the top of my head to the lightest at the bottom. And I usually like fading my way down, so now I'll begin to take that middle guideline out. And now I'm going to take that same one guard and just close the lever, because remember, whichever guard you use on a certain section, you take that same guard with the lever closed to take out its bottom guideline. But here comes the kind of tricky part, because remember when I said those principles won't always stand to be true. In my scenario, that one guard lever closed wasn't fully taking out that line. So what I did was go one guard below to a half guard with the lever open. Now if this is a little too confusing, you can always stick to that one guard lever closed, and it will take out that line to a certain extent. It just won't be fully blended. I apologize again, y'all, for the blurriness of this part of the video, but pretty much all I'm doing is taking that half guard lever open and just tapping away at that line, making sure I'm not going too much over the line, because then I'll create another guideline, which I don't want. And the hair can be weird, man, especially like mine, because there's some sections where the one guard lever closed does perfectly fine, and then there's other sections where I need to go half guard and, you know, close it here and there. So as y'all can see, this is where that initial guideline was, and I think it's taken out pretty well. So now I'm going to close the lever on my clippers with no guard, because my first guideline I used no guard lever open. So now I'm using no guard lever closed to take out that guideline. And remember, once again, I'm just flicking out at that line with small strokes, making sure I'm not going up too high, just to take out that line and get a perfect blend. So if you guys can tell, there's actually a harsh line right under section 1. And section 1 is the part that I didn't touch with any of my guards or clippers. And because I used the one guard for the section right below it, I'm going to use a 1.5 guard this time with the lever closed to take out that guideline. So basically what I'm doing, y'all, is reversing the principles that I taught you. So because section 1 was the part of my hair that I didn't use any guard on, doesn't mean that I won't use any guard to take out that bottom guideline. All you have to do is assess and realize the guard that you use for the section below it, and go up a guard with the lever closed to take out that guideline. So if you picked up on it, the higher on the head we go, the higher the guard we use. Therefore I know to put on a bigger guard to take out this top guideline. And you won't even always have to do this process, because depending upon how long your hair is when you begin the fade, or how compressed or stretched you want the fade to be, sometimes it'll just perfectly blend together without you having to take out that top guideline. Alright y'all, now that I finished all the steps and I assessed my hair, now I'm going to begin to do cleanup work and find sections that I may have missed, may have not done the best job on, and clean those parts up. So usually when I start this process, I know exactly where I need to brush up at and what guard needs to be used, but typically I like to go a guard higher just in case. An example of this would be if my bottom guide line, no guard lever closed, still has a line in it, I like to use a half guard lever close just so I don't potentially push that bottom guide line up. And you know, if that line isn't coming out, then I'll start to steadily make my way back down. Alright y'all, now that I'm done with my fade, it's time to start working on the lining. So first things first, man, we're gonna start prepping the canvas by brushing the hair down. And because I have a lot of hair bulk on top of my lining, I'm gonna take my half guard lever open and cut with the grain to remove some of it. And please y'all, do not cut against the grain when debulking your lining. Now this next process that I'm doing may be something that you guys can skip, but because I have a lot of cowlicks on my lining, I'm gonna brush my hair backwards. So I'm gonna start at the very center point of my head, right between my eyebrows, and I'm gonna push my widow's peak back. After that, I'm gonna begin moving to one side in a straight line. Now I personally have some pretty cheap outliners, so they're not the sharpest, and I really don't care for them to be, because my hair falls over my hairline anyways, and my hairline seems to be receding a little bit on the ends, so I really don't want to risk pushing it back. So after I'm finished with that, I'm now going to brush my hair back down and do the same process over again with my hair flowing in a downwards direction. And I'm really just slightly tapping away at that hairline, really making sure I'm not pushing it back. There's even some parts of the hairline that I'm not touching at all. Alright y'all, this is the final product. The biggest thing I'll say, man, is that this definitely takes time in order to really perfect and get good at this. I've been doing it for some months and I'm still, you know, not a pro at cutting hair. So just be patient, man. You know, if the first 5 times you mess up, just keep doing that as in any other thing in life, man. The first time I actually cut my hair, it was not good at all. And I was so close to calling on my barber and just being like, yo, like, I'm sorry. Can you please just squeeze me and cut my hair? Like, I'll never try this again. But I stuck to it, kept cutting my hair, and now I think I'm at a point to where I'm pretty decent at it. So if y'all out there and y'all try it, man, just know that if you have the smallest form of gradiency from dark to light, it's gonna look like a clean or good fade, because when you're in passing and you walk past somebody or whatever, unless you put patches in your hair, which is kind of hard to do so if you're not trying to, it's gonna look like a clean fade. You know, the only time people will be able to see many flaws in it is if they're staring at it for a long time, like your friends or something, or if it's an actual barber, then they can probably see the flaws in it. But besides that, man, even if it's a really mediocre fade, it's gonna look pretty nice. All right, man, I hope y'all enjoyed this video. If you or anybody you know have been complaining about these prices and these barbers losing their minds, man, send this video to them and follow this guy, man. I also make all sorts of content. I have like a motivational channel. I have a basketball channel coming on the way. This haircut channel, reacts channel, all that, man. I'm gonna leave the links below for the ones I have up right now. So if y'all interested in that, make sure y'all check it out. Hit that like button, subscribe, man. And I'll catch you on the next one.